Okay.
Yeah.
So now we're on. Hey, everybody. This is Buck Benny speaking. Welcome to this is essentially our second episode of the Jack Benny Show, presenting the Jack Benny television show. I've presented all the radio shows, but here's the TV shows. And I have two great guests with me that are going to be back. I don't know. They might be back every week. It might be every few weeks. We'll see. Whenever they're available, we'll get them. And this is, we'll first have John Henderson. He's over on yes, there he is. Thank you. He's on This Day in Jack Benny, the picture I have, if I can point to behind me. And he's got his shirt on too. Oh, look at that. And it's a great podcast, and his intros, I mean, I joke around with John and say we're sworn enemies. We're not really sworn enemies, but I do listen to his intros, and every once in a while I'll swear at them because they're so darn good and so much better than mine. But it's all good. And John, you do what? One episode a week, essentially, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I also do some bonus episodes on Patreon, but on the podcast, it's an episode a week.
Yeah, so he does an episode of Jack Benny every week. I do 4 episodes of Jack Benny every week, so that means mine's 4 times as funny probably. So you might, and I'm over there at what am I, the Jack Benny Show OTR podcast. I wanted to, anybody search for it to find it. So there you go. But both of our podcasts are great. We actually, no one knows this, but we kind of coordinate our podcasts a little bit because mine are always from the anniversary date. So I have 4 different years, and I present those 4 years all year long. And John takes the other 20 years of Jack Benny and features them. So we never overlap. We're always different. And so it's easy to listen to his and mine. So there you go. If you want to hear 5 episodes of Jack Benny a week, listen to both our podcasts and you'll get 5 Jack Bennys a week. That's awesome.
Yeah, I definitely want people to be able to listen to both. And I also think that we should start a feud.
Yes.
Yes.
Man. I've been feuding, but it's been kind of one way. So it's just me complaining about you, John. Yeah, we should start a feud. Well, and then we also, I guess I should flip it over to, we have Kathy Fuller-Seeley here, who has written a couple books about Jack Benny, and I'm going to flip off my background because I know if I show her books, it will not show up correctly.
Well, I did have Kathy on my podcast before she wrote any books, and now she's written 2.
I know. Isn't that incredible? That's awesome. And her books, let's see. I've got them here. Let's see. First book was this one.
Oh, thank you.
Is this showing up forward to you guys or backwards to you guys?
No, forward.
Forward. Oh, good. I never know with the screen how it does this.
You're right, because I see the poster backwards. So.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, your poster looks great. That's the only movie that Mary ever did, right? As on your poster.
I can't believe I found it in an antique mall.
Oh, that's awesome.
For a very obscure film. So.
Yeah, a hugely obscure film. Anyway, Kathy's first book is Jack Benny and the Golden Age of American Radio Comedy. Now, next time you're going to release a book, you can talk to John and I, and we'll figure out a way to make it short and punchier title than that.
I tried, and the publisher said, no, we want something longer. I just said, how about Jack Benny? And they so
I will tell you this. This, to me, is the best book on Jack Benny that's been written in years and years and years and years. I mean, it's a great book, completely different stories and everything than all the other books have. A lot of them there were basically 4 biographies written about Jack that are considered the great 4 biographies. I guess it's kind of like Jesus with Luke, John, and Matthew.
There you go.
Yeah, but the 4 Jack and they're similar to the Bible in that they tell the same stories in all different ways too about Jack Benny in this case, but Kathy's tell different stories, which is lovely. And then her next book, which just came out recently, yay! The Jack Benny Lost Radio Programs, has his first 36 radio programs.
26, yes.
Okay, I always can't remember how many. And one of the first one is definitely in circulation and things, but you put that in here, which I was glad to have the script. And then the scripts for all the other ones that are missing, those other 25 or whatever, are all in here. A great read. And if you're a big Jack Benny fan and have heard the shows over and over again, when you read it, it's kind of weird. It's like you're hearing the show in your head, and so it's almost as good as hearing it in person. Let's get to today's episode, the train station episodes. Probably next to the Christmas shopping episodes, the longest running series of episodes that people really get into and are like, oh wow, that is those are awesome to have, and some of those popular episodes. What have you thought overall, John, about both this episode, but also previous, of course, the radio train station episodes?
It's amazing how you can see the same thing over and over again, and somehow he makes it so that it's still funny every time you see it. I haven't seen too many of the television episodes I was mentioning, but they do this train station sort of premise in a lot of the radio shows. So it was cool to see it like with your eyes. That was neat. But I was also surprised at how many of the jokes I knew, but also how funny it was still.
You think they have a lot in common, and they put Jack into a different place, not his house, where so many other different characters can come at him in quick a succession, unlike, say, if he was just at the house with Rochester or Mary or Don, things move more slowly. But you can throw all these marvelous little characters, whether Mel Blanc doing this, Frank Nelson doing that, the tout doing this, the sportsman running it. So, and the actual pace of this episode, even though it's live, the fact that they were so ambitious and had Jack running back and forth across the stage, doing so much, really struck me. I had not really seen this particular live episode before, and that was really one thing that struck me, is they had the timing down pat. Even though you could see, because it's live, little things where he laughs a little bit, or but they'd worked really hard on the timing to try and pull all these other characters together and have the show come off within the half an hour. So I said, what I love about this episode is that it's this really fascinating mix of radio and television. It's on a tiny, small stage being done live, and the people are all crowded in next to each other, which makes it seem like really early television. Right. It's not an expansive set, because they're trying to, keep it all together for this tightly run show that had to go off in 25 minutes, all done, live. And yet it calls to mind so many of his classic radio gags, the things we loved. Yep. And just as you say, made them, even though they were so incredibly familiar, it was like welcoming them back. It wasn't repetitive and dull. Although, to be completely honest, Mel's crying guy gets a little on my nerves at some point. But that's just me. But otherwise, just you see the way they could still play with Amazon, Azusa, and Cucamonga and make it something slightly different. The way so many things can be slightly different.
Yes.
Yeah. It definitely, like you said, I didn't think about the fact that it was just on one stage. It's really a small area, because you get so drawn into the whole story, to the point where I was a little taken aback and shocked when the curtain came down, because at the very end of the episode, the curtain comes down right in front of the stage, and you're like, oh yeah, it's a stage.
Oh yeah, I agree. It you do not feel contained by that stage. They really used all that space and tried and
which to me is a part of the genius of early live television. So it's and the fact they shot it out in Los Angeles, so we had a little more time to prepare than if they'd had to train it or fly to New York and do the episode. I'd like to just mention, I think, two things also that stood out to me in the episode of Jack sort of putting himself forward as the center, was one when he kisses the girl.
Yes.
And the other one, he
doesn't just sort of kiss the girl. He really kisses that girl.
Better than Marilyn Monroe. He really, hooray for him. Yeah. But he goes at it. And one of his most forward kisses, I would say, in all his career. And also the fact he talks back to the tout.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
So rarely, so in a way, it was the Hooray for Jack episode.
Yeah.
I was going to say, why don't we get into the minutia in this episode? Some of the references and things like that. Like there's the book stand where he talks about Bing Crosby's book. Bing Crosby, of course, is the crooner. Boom, 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 boom. And then Bob Hope's book, Have Tux Will Travel, and Georgie Jessel's book, and Fred Allen's book. And I imagine that you, well, maybe, Buck, you've read Fred Allen's book, perhaps?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I love Fred Allen's book. I believe he was probably talking about Treadmill to Oblivion, which is considered still, as far as I know by most scholars, it's considered one of the best books on radio ever written, and which is pretty amazing since how long ago it was written. But just a beautiful book to read and to get the insights of Fred.
All right. Before we wrap up, I want to do one more obscure reference that
I love that. Yeah, go.
Sure will be a stumper because it stumped me and it got a huge laugh. Do you have any idea who Jim Clinton was?
Oh, yeah.
Jim Clinton?
Jim Clinton, that's what he says.
I believe he ran for president and he was the father of Bill Clinton. Am I correct?
I don't think so. That's not what I...
It was a good guess.
What I found, and I'm pretty sure this is right based on the context, is it was a clothing store, clothing manufacturer. So they did like suits and things like that. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So listen.
Wow. So that maybe only the West Coast people would have understood that joke. That everybody else in the country would be going, wow.
What? And Jack didn't care. Jack did jokes like that every once in a while that were very, like, 3 people in the audience would get the joke. And he's like, well, I'm going to do it. But he knew to do some jokes that were bigger and would get everybody, and other ones he's fun with. So,
well, John, I appreciate your research very much.
So do I. John, I mean, that's one of the reasons I wanted to have him come, because I knew he would bring some obscure facts and things like that. That's fantastic. This has been just awesome to do this with you guys, and I really hope that one or both of you are available multiple weeks to come out and be with us. But
from Television City in Hollywood, the Jack Benny program presented by Lucky Strike.
Light up a lucky, it's light up time.
Be happy, go lucky, it's light up time.
For the taste that you like, light up a Lucky Strike. Relax, it's light up time.
There's a time and a place for everything. And the right time for a Lucky is any time you want to enjoy a great cigarette. And the right place for a Lucky is wherever you happen to be at the time. You'll always enjoy Luckies because Luckies taste better. Lucky Strike is made of fine, naturally good-tasting tobacco. And it's toasted to taste better, cleaner, fresher, smoother.
Yes, sir. Lucky's taste better. Anytime, anywhere. So right now, light up a Lucky. It's light up time. Enjoy the best tasting cigarette you ever smoked.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight Jack Benny leaves for New York City. As a matter of fact, right now, Jack and Rochester are in a taxi cab on their way to the Union Station.
Well, Rochester, it won't be long now. We'll soon be on the train on our way to New York.
By the way, boss, you didn't tell me. Why are we making this trip?
Well, for the same reason I went last year. You see, my option is coming up, and I'm a little nervous.
Well, you needn't be, boss. Your sponsor's office is on Madison Avenue opposite CBS, isn't it?
What difference does that make?
If he doesn't pick up your option, you can run across the street and get on Striking Ridge.
What?
I'll rush into a phone booth and get the Heartline going.
Rochester, I hope you won't have to do that. Oh, driver, can you make it a little bit faster, please? We have a train to catch.
I know. I know.
What's the matter with him?
Say, boss, when we get to New York, are we going to stay at a nice hotel or that Acme Plaza again?
Well, I'm going to stay at the Acme Plaza. I like it there.
Well, I kind of thought you would. So I packed your bathrobe, your slippers, and a flashlight.
Rochester, it's inside now.
I'm glad. Once you stayed at a place where we had to pack a bicycle.
All right, all right. Hey, we're near the station. There's a Union Station just a block up ahead. Now, that's why I like it better taking a taxi instead of our own, car.
Okay, folks, you can get out here.
Wait a minute. Get out here? We're a block away. Why don't you take us to the station?
Oh, I never take anybody to the station.
What?
I can't stand goodbyes.
What?
I can't bear to see people go away. That's why I hate to take people to the railroad station. I hate it. I hate it.
Look, cry on your own time. The meter is running. And don't be silly now. Take us to the station.
Okay. Okay.
Train leaving on track 5 for Anaheim, Azusa, and Cucamonga.
Rochester, where's the taxi driver? I told him to bring the bags in.
Oh.
Find out where.
Oh, here he comes.
Driver, how much is the fare?
That'll be...
Stop crying, will you?
I can't help it. I told you I had to take people to the station. I didn't want to come to the station, but you made me. You made me. You made me.
I'm sorry I upset you. Here, keep the change.
Thank you. Why do people have to go away?
So emotional. Well, Rochester, here, I'll take Polly, and you take the bag. I gotta find Don Wilson.
Oh, yes, sir.
If I can. You take the bags, and I'll see if I can find them. Liz, could you help me, please?
Correction, please. The train scheduled to stop at Anaheim, Azusa, and Cucamonga will only go to Anaheim and Azusa. Cucamonga was moved to make room for the freeway.
Jack! Oh, Don, I was looking all over for you.
I was over talking to the station master. I wasn't satisfied with the accommodations on the train, but it's all straightened out now.
It is?
Yeah, they're hooking on an extra diner.
Oh, well, for you, they could hook on another engine, too. Believe me.
Hey, Jack, why are you taking that silly parrot to New York?
Because the last time I left her alone, she got so upset, she picked out all her feathers, plucked them right out.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, I still have the pillow.
Well, Jack, I want to check a bag and send a wire. I'll see you later.
All right, I just want to get some magazines over here.
Hiya, bud.
Huh?
Long time no see.
Yeah. I always run into that racetrack tout.
May I help you, sir?
No, I'm just looking around. I want to find something to read, that's all.
Attention, please, attention. The train arriving from Reno, Nevada will be 6 weeks late. The engineer is getting a divorce.
Look, miss.
Yes, sir?
Wait a minute, I think I'll take this week's Look magazine here because something I want to read in here about Giselle McKenzie. Story here. I want to get a book, too, on the train. Let's see. There's Treadmill to Oblivion by Fred Allen. There's Bob Hope's book, Have Tucks Will Travel. Call Me Lucky by Bing Crosby. Call Me Lucky Lager by Frank Remley. There's a corkscrew in here for the... Well, anyway, I think I've read everything.
Here's a wonderful new book by Georgie Jessel I know you'll love. It's called This Way, Miss.
Oh, this is Jessel's new book, huh? Oh, yeah, I think I'll buy this one. I'll have him autograph it for me, you see.
Oh, do you know Mr. Jessel?
I'm his son. I'll take this one, I think.
Fine.
Attention, please, attention. Train now leaving on track 8 for Barstow, Albuquerque, Kansas City, Chicago, and Cucamonga. They really moved it.
Thank you very, very much. Okay.
Jack,
What?
Jack, look who I just ran into.
Hey, the sportsman. Hiya, fellas.
Yeah, they came down to say goodbye to you.
Well, that's nice. Goodbye, boys. You know, I'm going right away. So I
Our regards to Broadway. Remember us to Barrow Square.
Everybody's looking.
On Lucky's hit parade.
Boy,
We
don't
wish
sing
that
that
we
station.
were there.
We know you go to Lindy's because the sauerkraut is free.
And tell everyone on Old Broadway to light an LSMFD.
Fellas, look, everybody's watching you. Stop dancing. Fellas, look, stop dancing. Everybody's watching. Fella, wait a minute, boys. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute! Even Max Liebman wouldn't say goodbye like that.
Attention, please, attention. On next Sunday, your railroad schedules will change. The whole country will go on light-up time.
Well, I can't interfere with that.
Give our regards to LS. Remember us to MFTFT.
Tell all our friends it's light up time.
No matter what the time may be.
Even daylight saving.
Lucky's are so much smoother. A cleaner, fresher cigarette. Lucky's are toasted, yes sirree. And like at Sullivan's Brown, they are the toast of the town. So let's all light up a Lucky's
Look it down. The next time the Sportsman Quartet want to say goodbye to me, bring him to my house, will you?
Okay, I'll do it, Jack. See you on the train.
Okay, I gotta go and pick up a ticket.
Bye, Marion.
Goodbye, Bill.
Ah, gee, isn't that sweet?
Oh, there you are, mister.
I thought you left.
I've been looking all over for you. I had to come back. Have a nice trip and enjoy yourself. Please, please, don't forget to write.
I never saw you before today.
I can't help it. I just can't stand to see people go. Why must people always be traveling, traveling, traveling?
Get away. Secretary Dulles must drive him nuts. Oh, my goodness, I forgot the parrot.
Bye, Marion.
Polly.
Goodbye, Bill.
Oh, isn't that cute? Polly, Daddy forgot all about you. I'm terribly sorry. Oh, Miss.
Yes,
The parrot happened to take a TV guide here. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. She already paid for it.
Polly paid for it? Where did she get the money? I don't know.
Attention, please, attention. All you absent-minded people who forgot to pay your income tax, train now leaving for Folsom, San Quentin, and Alcatraz. Change clothes in San Francisco.
Silliest thing I've ever heard. Come on, Polly.
Goodbye, Bill.
Gosh. I'll never sing.
Hey, Bud. Bud.
Huh?
Come here a minute.
Who, me?
Yeah, you. Where you going?
To New York.
What train you taking?
The Super Chief. What?
Take the El Capitan.
I don't know. I like the Super Chief.
Come here a minute. El Capitan will beat Super Chief into Chicago by 3 lengths.
Are you sure?
I was talking to the engineer that rides El Capitan, and he says that today she is ready.
Well, gee, I don't know. The El Capitan, eh?
Yes, sir. Take my word for it. She likes a fast track, hugs the rail, and she has a braided caboose.
No kidding.
Just look at the breeding.
The breeding?
El Capitan is by 20th century out of Bethlehem steel.
Well, thanks very much for the tip, but, you see, I have some information, too, you know.
You have?
Yeah. Come here a minute. Don't noise this around, see? But I'm taking the Super Chief.
Why?
I found out Super Chief is a sleeper.
Okay. See you at the Kentucky Derby.
What a character.
Attention, please, attention. Will the immigrant carrying the bird cage please go to the station agent and be vaccinated?
An immigrant. I was here before the Indians. Cleveland Indians, I mean.
There you
Oh,
are.
for heaven's sakes, you again.
I'm so glad you haven't left yet. I bought something for you. Here, take this candy for these flowers.
Flowers?
Have a nice trip, but please, hurry back. I didn't want to take you to the station, but you made me.
I know. I made you.
Why do people always have to go away?
$9,000 taxi drivers in Los Angeles. I had to get Betty Davis.
Boss, we're almost ready to go. I better take Polly and put her on the train.
Okay.
All right.
Now, Rochester, wait a minute. You better take this, too. And here, and I'll meet you on the train.
All right.
Here, take this. Oh, I'm terribly sorry.
Mr. Benny!
Mr. Kenton! So, why are you dressed like that?
I'm going back to Glasgow for a family reunion.
A family reunion?
Aye, lady, the kids sold the black loman.
You mean that your family is Scotch?
Hoot, man.
Oh, my, is your wife Scotch?
Positively Scotch, yes.
What do you know? So your wife is a wee bonny lassie, huh?
Wee Bonnie she isn't, but like Lassie she looks.
Mr. Kitzel, you must be kidding.
Yeah. Oh, my.
I thought so. Hey, listen.
Yeah.
Can you play the bagpipes?
No, when I bought the suit, Jim Clinton threw it in.
Well, goodbye, Mr. Kitzel.
Goodbye.
Have a wonderful trip and a lot of fun.
And a wee docking doris to you.
Yeah.
Gloman in the gloaming with my back.
Attention, please. Attention. This is an emergency. Will the section hands and maintenance men please clear track 7? The express now arriving in Los Angeles has no brakes. It is now going through Hollywood. It is now going through Westwood. It is now going through Santa Monica. And there you are.
Gee, this I can't figure out at all. Oh, Mister. Yeah! Are you the ticket clerk?
No, they put me behind these bars for toasting marshmallows out of season.
Look, now, don't be smart. I have a reservation here for a ticket. I'm Jack Benny.
Well, you could have fooled me. I thought you were Davy Crockett.
Now, look, I've got a ticket there. I made a reservation.
Well, that's funny. I don't find any reservation here for you, Mr. Benny.
Well, I made it 3 days ago. Anyway, if you haven't got it, give me a ticket right away. I need space on the super cheap. I'm going to New York.
Well, would you like the $60 ticket or the $140 ticket?
Why, what's the difference?
With the $140 ticket, you ride inside.
Well, of course I want to ride inside. Now, don't be smart and get me my ticket. I want a ticket to New York.
Return trip?
No, one way.
Good. Now, if we can only get rid of the small.
Now, cut that out.
Well, aren't we lucky? I just found your reservation.
You didn't find it at all. You had it all the time. You just did that to aggravate me.
Ooh, did I?
Give me the ticket, will you?
Attention, please. Attention. The super chief now leaving for Albuquerque, Kansas City, Chicago, and New York. All aboard.
That's my train. Hurry up. Yeah. Here.
Boss, we're getting ready to go.
I'll be with you in a minute.
Sign right here.
Okay. Be right with you, Roger.
Oh, boss!
I'll be right with you.
Bye, Marion.
Goodbye, Bill.
Hey, Bill. Bill, look, this is none of my business, but you better hurry, too.
What for? My train doesn't leave till September.
September?
Bye, Marion.
Goodbye, Bill.
Well, look, my train leaves right away. Goodbye, Marion.
Jack will be back in just a minute, but first...
Light up a lucky.
It's light up time.
Be happy, go lucky.
It's light up time.
For the taste that you like, light up a lucky strike.
Relax.
It's light up time.
You know, probably the most fun about working around the yard is when your wife says, "Come on, let's have a smoke." Especially if the smoke is a Lucky Strike. Because a Lucky tastes better every time. Now, I'll tell you why that is. It all begins right here in the heart of America's tobacco-growing country. Begins with fine tobacco. LSMFT. Lucky Strike means fine tobacco. Tobacco so fine, so light, so mild, it's just naturally good tasting. And then that tobacco is toasted. It's toasted is the famous Lucky Strike process that brings Lucky's fine tobacco to its peak of flavor, tones it up to make it taste even better, cleaner, fresher, smoother. So whenever it's light-up time for you, light up a Lucky. You'll say it's the best tasting cigarette you ever smoked.
For the taste that you like, light up a Lucky Strike.
Right now.
Light up a Lucky.
It's light up time.
Oh, boy. Gee, that was a good dinner. They really have good food on this train. Well, I think I might as well relax and... Wait a minute. Whose clothes are these? This isn't my station. It is D. Gee, I can't... You!
I told you I hate the station! I didn't want to come to the station. I tried to break away, and it's your fault! You made me come to the station! I hate to come to the station, but you made me!
I couldn't help it. I'll get another compartment. I'll get another compartment. Stay here.
Ladies and gentlemen, be sure to watch Ann Sudden next week. And Jack Benny will be on in 2 weeks from New York with his guest, Jackie Gleason. It'll be the funniest show.
Thank you very, very much, ladies and gentlemen. He was right. Even though he was crying, he was right. I'm going to be in New York in 2 weeks and do my last show from there, and my guest star is going to be Jackie Gleason. You see, I was on his show once, and we have a sort of a reciprocal agreement. You see, where I go on Jackie Gleason's show for nothing. You see, you know I don't get paid. You know what I mean? And then Gleason, of course, comes on my show for nothing, you see. Reciprocal meaning that Gleason is just as cheap as I am. And, of course, we're all going, and Mary may be on this show, too, in about 2 weeks. That is, if it won't interfere with her shopping. And, of course, I know you're wondering, now, why would she be shopping? You know, how could she be in a store on Sunday? Well, they lock her in Saturday night. So if any of you in New York happen to pass a store window and they see a mannequin changing furs, you see, don't worry about it, it's Mary. You know, and now, ladies and gentlemen, you know, I'll never forget, I must tell you about this. Mary, the last time we went to New York, well, I think it was the last trip, Mary said to me that she had never been to the circus. She wanted me to take her to the circus, so I did, you know. And then when we got inside, of course, I was a wreck in there. Never saw such animals. I jumped away and said, Jack, what's the matter? I said, well, look at these. I never saw animals like these in my life, with lions and tigers. And she said, Jack, take off your glasses. This is the flea circus. We had the most wonderful time. Really. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet the fellow that's been on my show for so many years and did the Crying Taxi Driver, Mel Blanc. Ladies and gentlemen. Mel, I want to tell you something. Really, you've been with me so many years, and you gave the most wonderful performance today. You were really great.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to sell you one of those, but anyway, Mel, you know what's amazing to me? How you can cry anytime you want to, like on the spur of the moment and everything. How do you do a thing like that? I can't understand it. It is just wonderful acting. Cry a little bit now.
Well, I have to be in the mood, Jack. I'm not in the mood right now.
Oh, you mean you're not? Well, couldn't you try? I mean, you couldn't. Now that you couldn't, I say. Well, all right. Well, anyway, thanks very, very much. Thank you, Jack, for being on the show. Oh, wait a minute. Mel, come back here. I may not see you later on, so here's your check, you know. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to... I can't understand music. I must be through. Goodbye.
Appearing on tonight's program were Mel Blanc, the Sportsman Quartet, Frank Nelson, Sheldon Leonard, Artie Auerbach, Chucky Bradley, Mike Moore, and Dolores Donlin. Remember, 1 week from tonight on this same station, be sure and watch Ann Southern in Private Secretary. Jack Benny's next television show will be in 2 weeks. In the meantime, this is Don Wilson reminding you to listen to Jack Benny on radio every Sunday night over the CBS Radio Network.
Here's true tobacco taste for filter smokers. Filter Tip Tareyton gives you all the full, rich flavor of Tareyton's famous quality tobacco and real filtration. Filter smokers everywhere are turning to Filter Tip Tareyton because only smooth, easy-drawing Filter Tip Tareyton gives them true tobacco taste. Look for the red, white, and blue stripes on the package. They identify Filter Tip Tareyton, the best in filtered smoking.
The Jack Benny program has been brought to you by the American Tobacco Company, America's leading manufacturer of cigarettes. The Jack Benny program has been selected for viewing by America's armed forces overseas.
I really like that. So.
Well, and I like with the radio episodes, what they do with these, just like the Christmas shopping episodes, every year they tweak it. Every year they like add a bit, take away a bit, and it fine-tunes it and fine-tunes it, and it gets where the bits they play over and over again, but they're the best bits. They really tweak it, and so then what comes into television are the best bits that they did. They bring the radio tout, they bring the bits with Frank Nelson and all of that. I'm curious with you guys. Well, first, let me go with this. I really liked something about the Sportsman on this. And John's probably not going to realize this because he hasn't watched that many of the television shows. I have watched a lot of the television shows. And they did something with the Sportsman I always wanted them to do. I think Jack did it a few times, but he did it this time for sure. What do you think that is with the Sportsman that maybe I really like that harkened back to the radio days? I see two blank looks. It was the, wait a minute. You know, he just didn't do that much on television, but to get that, and this was a perfect episode to do it in because he always did this on the radio episode.
Great. Both that and him doing the little dance along with them at that the one turn. It was like, wow, you know, there is so much packed into this show, this episode. So, but that's a great idea. So I purposefully haven't watched that many of the TV episodes. Because when I was researching the radio book, I didn't want to, be biased or unconsciously mix the two up. But what a great idea that he wouldn't have to yell, "Wait a minute!" Maybe there was something about television where he didn't want it to go as wild and out of control,
right?
As we always imagined that the Sportsmen went with their whoops and things like that. When they were on getting out of control on the radio.
Right. And I think he wanted to differentiate it from radio. He didn't love bringing too much radio over to television, but every once in a while he embraced it. And usually it'd be a whole episode that he embraced, like I say, the shopping episode, this episode. But many of the episodes, he's just standing in front of a curtain doing a monologue that you and I were talking about, Kathy, are more similar to his early radio shows where he did monologues. He really didn't do monologues in the later radio shows. But in this case, I was going, oh, he's not going to stand in front of a curtain ever, but he does at the very end of the episode. He gets in front of the curtain and does a great bit with Mel. Mel comes out, does this really nice, subtle acting of Jack going, oh, you can cry on demand. Why don't you go ahead and do it? And he's like, oh, I can't, you know, I'm not, what, you know, it's like he's not in the mood. It's like he's being shy because this is really Mel. And then I'm not going to give it away, but then they just totally change that situation. And it's one of the best bits in the show is that last 2 minutes with Mel and Jack together. I love it.
At the end there, he mentions that he's going to be on the Jackie Gleason program. And I was wondering if either of you have seen that or heard about that one at all.
Yeah, he's on Jackie Gleason. I'm trying to remember if it was
what I read.
I think he might have played like the either he was the owner of the apartment complex maybe or something, or he was. It was either that or he was the plumber. He was one of the two, I think. I'm just trying to remember which show he was on. They always, when he appeared on other people's shows, they did really strange things with Jack sometimes and made him completely out of his normal. He wouldn't be out of character. He would be in character, but you would put him as a plumber, which would make no sense with Jack's character and the way his character act, you know. But it was a hilarious situation, of course. So yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. We all know Jackie Gleason from The Honeymooners, but this was just before The Honeymooners began.
Right.
This was the Gleason show, but I believe it was a Honeymooners like sketch that he was part of.
I think it was. Yeah, they did a lot of Honeymooners sketches, which eventually became the Honeymooners TV show. Right. And I think Jack was in one of those sketches. I'll have to see. Certainly, since Jack mentions it, if I can find it on YouTube, I'll connect it in with this episode and we'll play it after the train station episode. But I don't know if it's out there or not. But I know I'm pretty sure I saw it at some point, or at least the clip that Jack's in that episode. The other thing I was going to say about this episode, is there anything from radio that you would like to have seen in this episode that they left off?
Polly did not speak.
Yes, Polly.
That's one thing. So why have a live bird and no Polly saying anything? But
that's because Polly did talk in some of the other episodes of the TV series. I know that.
Oh, okay.
But
they're filling up at the gas station and Polly.
Right.
Yeah. So
it makes you wonder if they had written some dialogue for Polly and then decided to cut it for time, but kept the bird. And
well, you know, Mel was so busy. It could just be that he needed to be. You know, that Mel was busy every second of that episode.
Yes.
So maybe they just couldn't do anymore.
And for me, I just really wish that both for the Christmas shopping episode and for this episode, I mean, they're absolute classics, they're wonderful. But I wish, in this particular case, I wish they would have had Dennis and I wish they would have had Mary, because I just think, you know, I probably didn't realize at the time this is going to maybe the only time we can get everybody together, and we should. And then for, of course, the shopping episode, it does have Dennis, but it doesn't have Mary. And I would love to have Mary in the shopping, because Mary does appear at least a dozen times in the Jack Benny TV show. And some of the episodes she appears in, I go, well, that was kind of a waste. You know, it wasn't the greatest episode, and you could have used, if you're only going to get her so many times, use her in the big episodes.
Well, except that she refused to appear on the live television episode.
Oh, you're right.
So she wasn't going to do that. So
no, and
but I'm curious, just as you say, now the very next episode from Laura's book, after this episode broadcast, they were in New York on May the 1st. And so that may be something that they needed to send some of these people ahead of time on the train. You know, I mean, there can be all these other circumstances about, and no, Jackie Gleason is on the May 1st, 1955 episode with the June Taylor Dancers, it turns out. So, there you go.
And I wonder if Jack was right. I mean, because they often did appear on each other's shows without charging each other, because I'll appear on yours, you appear on mine. We'll call it a wash. It's just funny how that's behind the scenes stuff you don't usually hear about, but Jack talks about it and says it. He said it in his radio show before when he's appeared on Fred's and then Fred's appeared on his. Oh, we don't have to pay each other because we're on each other's shows. So I just think it's funny how Jack lets us in on that.
Also, another thing I learned was this was still the era of very high income tax.
Yes.
And if you had to pay that person to appear on the show, the U.S. government got 95% of the money. So this is why they were exchanging so you didn't have to pay each other. And then you could like give a gift. Was it Red Skelton was always having somebody put down new tile or flooring in his house instead of paying him so that he wouldn't have to get taxed. So it's fascinating that there are so many contextualizations and other things we can find to help enrich the story.
Yeah.
And I so appreciate what the both of you and all the other, sort of Benny fan scholars do out there, that this is not just something dead and gone from 60 some years ago.
Right.
But that we still find it interesting today. We're still learning more about it, understanding them better, making more connections.
Yep. And that's what John does so well in his podcast. He constantly is telling us everything that was kind of going on around this time. He plays clips from other things, from baseball games and from whatever was going on. I really enjoy that. And the amount of time he has to put into his intros must be tremendous, John.
Well,
it's one of my huge frustrations that I always talk about is the fact that the guy was worried about being on a treadmill to oblivion. He names his book that. And he and his dad both work at the Boston Public Library, and he turns everything over in his life, or his wife does anyway, to the Boston Public Library. And what does the Boston Public Library do? They keep it all locked away and you can't get to it worth beans. And it's like they have, I know exactly what they have. I've been there and I cataloged it all, and they have like all the missing, not all of them, a huge amount of radio shows that no one's ever heard or hasn't heard since they originally came out. And I've been begging them for years, we got to get this out there. We got to, and we'll see. At this point, they've been, for the last like 3 or 4 years, they've been redoing their, whatever department, I can't remember what department he's in, the rare materials department or whatever. They've been redoing that section of the library. And so it's all been closed. It's supposed to have been open, I think last year reopened, but it's still not. And so I'm waiting till it reopens and then I'll keep badgering them. I think we should go out and picket in front and with signs that say free Fred and amnesty for Allen, and to try and get them to free Fred Allen's material so we can get to it. I know Kathy has been there and has wanted to, and his scripts are there. And unlike Jack's scripts, they'll have scripts that like 5 versions of the script as he changes it over and over and over again. So it's really interesting to see how he changed them over time. Now I'm more interested in, of course, getting the radio shows released and out there, but we'll see. I'll keep working on it. John, you put some pressure on them too.
Okay, I'll do that. Now, there's one more book that they mentioned, which was really obscure, and I had to like do tons of research to figure out what they could possibly be talking about. And it's called TV Guide, and apparently what it is
and the bird bought it
right in the book.
What was that?
I said, and what it was is it would list what's on TV right in the book.
Isn't that amazing? That's amazing. Why didn't they come up with something like that today?
They mentioned a couple other television shows. I'm just going to go through these real quick.
You go through them. I'm going to grab a book.
Davy Crockett, which of course Disney Davy Crockett won. Strike It Rich, the game show, where apparently I watched one of the episodes on YouTube. They would have people come and they would sort of wager how much per question they would like to put up. And it seemed like it was usually for charity. Like people would write in letters saying why they needed the money or what circumstance they were in. And so people would play to help these other people.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, and I thought I'd show, I grabbed Eddie Cantor's book. Did he mention Eddie? Maybe?
He did. Yeah. I think it wasn't, oh no, it wasn't Eddie Cantor's book. That was
Jessel, right?
Jessel's, it was Jessel's book. Okay, I don't have Jessel's, but I do have Treadmill to Oblivion. first printing, that it was in nice shape. I mean, you never know what you're going to get. I think it was listed as very fine, very good or something. I'm like, that's better than very good. But
Well, John, and the Look magazine, wasn't it Look, with an article about Giselle McKenzie? And I'm going, oh, Jack.
Yeah.
Now, explain for us younger people who Giselle McKenzie was.
Well, Giselle is this beautiful young woman, very talented as a singer and a musician. And she appeared on Jack's show several times. They played a delightful a one-upsmanship violin duet about getting to know you. She also was on the Lucky Strike Hit Parade. Jack had a great interest in her career, and it's quite possible that they had a relationship. They, Giselle, they both agreed to say, we'll never say. So, but he always smiles so brightly when she's around.
Oh, he loves her. You can tell for sure. And Mary's, let's see, the lost episodes, which you should all buy because we're trying to get her to release another copy, another volume of this. But I mean, here they have a couple Giselle McKenzie episodes that are really good. They're great. Some of the best Giselle McKenzie moments I've ever seen, and fantastic. I just thought I was going to show you that I believe this book I got off of Amazon that was supposed to be in very good condition, right? And I believe this book I got on Amazon that was also supposed to be in very good condition. So you just never know exactly what you're going to get when you. I think they said the dust jacket wasn't that great, but the rest of it was really good. And I'd say calling it not that great is probably pretty accurate for the dust jacket on that one. I love buying from Amazon. It's like, okay. Yeah, it's a roll of the dice, But the other thing I was going to talk about that was missing from this episode that I would have loved to have seen, and I checked because I had Mary's book, and I'm falling off the screen. I don't know why. Was Elliot Lewis was never on Jack's TV show ever. And I think it might have been because they were having some issues between him playing Remley and things later on, but on the Phil Harris show. But his bit that he had with Frank Nelson, where they go through the Glockamore, just the lyrics. All he would say was the lyrics of Glockamora, and it was so funny how he would do that with Frank Nelson, and they did it multiple times. And when he read it, I mean, he'll talk. There's interviews of him talking about this, and he'll be like, Jack, this isn't funny. There's no joke here. This isn't going to work. And Jack's like, trust me, just do it. And so he does it, and they get so many laughs, and it's hilarious. And I just love that bit. And I wish that Elliot Lewis would have been on here to do that bit during this episode, but that's something we don't get. But pretty much the rest of the best stuff of the train episodes from the radio show come onto this TV show, and so I think that's fantastic. I think the other thing that's really interesting with this show is that they essentially redo it for film, like we were saying, but they redo it twice. They redo it once, like I said, as half of a train station episode and half of a episode that happens at Jack's house. But the second time they redo it in 1963, I believe, I'm pretty sure it's 63, that it's interesting because they don't do it in a train station. They do it in an airport. And they tried the same thing in radio, and it didn't work in radio. And so I'm like, okay, it failed in radio, and you went back to the train station because it wasn't as funny in an airport. And then you do the same mistake again, and it's still not as funny in an airport as it is in the train station. But that I'm like, all right, whatever. I guess they were saying at that time, certainly by 1963, most people were traveling by plane. Not as many people are going by train. But
and wasn't he having to do nearly 39 episodes a season by then? So even at 55, he's barely on a dozen times a season. So
correct.
The pressure on the writers to just keep coming up with stuff.
Right.
Must have been really tough. And so I can just imagine them going back to somewhere in Jack's office, the collection of the original scripts, and going back and say, oh gosh, what can we steal from? What
Exactly.
can we adapt?
Well, in the airport one, it's interesting because one, they have a bit that's not in this at all, and it's with Billy Mooney, who is later, within a couple of years, he's on Lost in Space as Will Robinson, and he's obviously maybe 5 or 6 when he's doing this, and he does a really good job. I like his bit. It's good. He basically is weighing himself, and it's really important for the script that he weighs a certain amount, and that's all. It just ties in. But the other piece that I think is huge for Benny fans is that at some point Rochester says, they had too much weight in Jack's luggage or something for the plane, right? And so Jack says, what did you do with the extra weight or whatever? And he says, well, I fixed it, so it's 40 pounds, and I gave the rest to that Mexican guy over there. And then Jack goes over to talk to the Mexican guy who is sitting, and it's Mel Blanc. I believe this is after his accident, so he has to be sitting because Mel Blanc was in a terrible auto accident, closest to death of anybody I've probably ever heard that actually that came back. And the whole thing about him coming back is that he was, at the time, supposedly the doctor talked to him and asked Bugs Bunny a question, and then he comes back in Bugs Bunny's voice because he'd been in a coma for a long time, and responded in Bugs Bunny's voice, and then basically woke up, is what they say happened. Anyway, but he still had casts on his legs and couldn't walk around or anything for a long time. So Jack comes over to him, sits down next to him, and they do the whole sigh routine, which is neat to see. But I thought, as I'm watching it, I'm going, man, this episode is pushing it as far as the racial stereotypes go, because you've got Mel playing a Mexican, and then in all three of these episodes, the train station, this train one you watched today, the second train station, and the airport one, they're always having somebody handling their bags that is a baggage person. Every time it is a black actor that does it, and every time in a very stereotypical black role, and that's one of the unfortunate things you have to deal with both the radio show and the television show, is that it will seem dated in that way at times and not be too racially sensitive. But the Rochester thing, I think, is hugely racially sensitive most of the time, and Rochester gets the best of Jack, and so I find that negates a lot of the other things that they do.
You are right. That was the one bit that I think didn't work on the show we're watching today. The fact that, again, trying to cram in so much into the half hour, to have Rochester go to the trouble of taking off his hat and putting on a porter's hat, which I think they didn't have time to develop the joke that he was just going to take the opportunity to try and pick up a little extra change pretending to be a porter. Or was he doing it to, because he didn't feel right, so it didn't, yeah.
It's a bit hard to tell what exactly they were going for. I was thinking like the joke was Jack Benny has Rochester be all the different roles. He's chef, he's butler, he's all this stuff. So when he's the porter, and then he'll change to a porter hat.
Yeah. But just as you say, through a 2020 lens, that's one little bit that doesn't wear so well. So.
Exactly. And I guess on that same area, I'll say that Jack has multiple episodes with Rochester and Rochester's friend Roy, who both is on radio sometimes in the later seasons, but is on many of the TV shows. And on the TV shows, almost every single time they have those two together, they're cleaning the house, and they're both, like, maybe one or both of them is in an apron, and it just doesn't wear right at all. And it's probably the most horrendous parts of the Jack Benny show, because it just feels like they're doing this skit specifically to say, oh, these black characters are lesser than our white characters, and so we're trying to show that by having them clean the house together and things. So
sure, and yet I
and I'm not sure that that's what they were going for, but that's sure what it feels like.
It can be read in a number of ways. It can also be read as a sort of misplaced attempt to give Rochester a friend.
I'm sure that's probably what it was.
As an equal, but just as you say, then they always talk about Rochester in the servant role, and that. So yeah, it don't work. So.
No.
I was just watching one of these episodes from 1969, and I'm sure you've seen it, where he brings Rochester out and he's like, I got a great pitch for a show with Rochester and myself. We'll both be spies. And of course, Bill Cosby had a show the previous season where he was a spy, and he's like, sorry, they already did that. And so then he says, okay, how about you come back as my valet? And he says, sorry, we don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So already starting to change by 69.
Yeah.
That's great. And where Jack at the end, that's such a marvelous bit from that special. And then he says, okay, let's just go get a hamburger together. So that was...
that's awesome. Yeah. Which special was that one? Do you ever know?
Yeah, Jack Benny's Bag.
Jack Benny's Bag. Okay. Yeah. Those specials are all sometimes available on YouTube, sometimes not. It just depends. Right now, I think they're not. There might be one up there, maybe, and the Bag might be one of them. But they're beautiful color presentations that I think all kind of originated from Laura Leff's collection that she makes available and things, and have trickled out different ways. But they're beautiful. The resolution of them, everything. It's surprising how good those things look. What I always like about them is the very beginning of all those specials, they show what show's not being shown. Kind of like last week's episode, the very first Jack Benny episode said, Ken Murray will not be seen tonight, and gladly gives up his time to Jack. And I'm like, how gladly did Ken Murray really give up his time to Jack?
They made it worth his while. So.
But they'll have shows that I've never seen. Like there's one with the guy that was in Kojak in some series that I've never seen before. But you get this still shot of it, of him, the actor, and then he's also the actor that was in Christmas Story playing the dad. Anyway, he was in some series that probably only ran a year or something, and they show this little tiny still of it, and I'm like, oh, I want to see that sometime. And almost every time before the Jack Benny specials, they always have that little card that says who they're skipping over, whose show they're interrupting. And every time I'm like, oh, that's another show I'd like to see sometime. every single time. But
specials were then truly special. So.
Yes. Well, and speaking of specials, I'll say one more thing and then I got to go. And we got to head out, but we'll hopefully get together next week again to chat. But the special that has Phil Harris on it, I'm so glad it exists. They do a bit about South. What is the song that Phil's known?
That's what I like about the South.
Yeah, that's what I like about the South. And they do a bit on that. That's a great bit. But I've always wanted to see the television show that Phil was on. He was only on one episode of Jack's entire 15-year run that he was actually on the show. But I don't really need to see it anymore. I mean, I'd be okay. I still want to see it, but it's one of those that's hidden away and nobody has it. Well, it exists. It's in UCLA or something. But I know that the bit is the exact same bit they did on the special. And I'm like, if you're only going to have Phil on with you 2 times in your whole television career, why do you do the same bit twice?
Well, imagine they didn't have VCRs or DVDs.
Yes.
They didn't imagine that anybody could remember that I mean.
No, it was from what, 10 years earlier, 15 years earlier. I mean, it was, yeah, I totally get that. And honestly, if we're never going to get to see the television show with him, at least we know we saw the bit. So that's fine, and it's in color, and to get those two together is just wonderful. And the other thing that always struck me weird about that is he has either right before it or right after it, the special right next to that one with Phil is one that features his whole cast, and it's the 20th anniversary special or something of being on television, I think, and the whole cast is there, and it's great. And you're like, well, where's Phil? Phil's not here. And then he shows up. I believe the Phil one is the very next one. And I don't know if Phil felt guilty about not being able to be on Jack's or what happened there.
You never know.
Yeah, you never. Or they were trying to arrange it, and he just wasn't available. And he said, well, I'm available this date. And Jack's like, well, then be on my next special. But it was just strange that he does appear in one of the specials, but not the special with everybody else in it. So.
Sure.
But it allowed them also to give Phil the kind of time he would need. If you had everybody, including Phil, in that one special, Phil's time would have been this little bit instead of a huge chunk. I agree. That is exactly why I love this episode and the shopping episode. The shopping episode, he can run into all these different clerks and things that are trying to sell him things, and so can Dennis, and so they have the cast intermixed with all these guest crazy people that are selling at the store. And in this case, of course, in the train station, it's all the different people at the train station, whether it's the guy he's buying the tickets from, which is of course Frank Nelson, or whether it's the sportsmen that are there, or the crazy train announcer that's going. I just thought that was and how do you do the train announcer and make it interesting for how much time they spend on it? And they show the speakers, they got these speakers that they keep on showing,
delightful.
And that works. And then they show the reaction of the crowd. The one part of this I thought was so funny was that they had the crowd really seems worried when he says, oh, the train's lost its brakes and it's going through, and everybody's just standing there looking at each other like they would in a real, like, an accident's happened. Oh my gosh, I have to live, what's going on? And I just thought, that's funny in itself.
I was thinking as I watched it about the little tiny ways, and that how this live television episode was different from a radio version. And It's little things like that. It's that we could see the crowd be worried. Whereas if they'd all just gone, ooh, it wouldn't have had, the visual impact.
Yes.
Although, just to say, I laughed like anything at the big horns and the information sign, and the fact that back in 1955, they thought that we really needed to make that link between looking at the speakers and what comes out of it. I love that.
They're not going to know where this is coming from. We better show the speaker. That's awesome.
Well, going back to the fact that you mentioned that there's Jack's in the middle and all these things are happening around them. A lot of times people talk about how Jack lets the rest of his cast sort of be the star. But you realize in this episode, there are so few members of his actual cast that we would think of when we think of the Jack Benny Show. Like Don Wilson does a 5-second intro, and then there's a scene with Rochester, and after that, there's none of his regular cast. We don't have Dennis Day or Phil Harris or Mary,
right?
Or that, and yet still, it's not about Jack. Jack is just reacting to what's going on. That's what I found really interesting. You realize it actually is Jack that's holding everything together. Reaction.
Yes.
And I also thought it was amazing considering, he's a radio guy. So, he's used to doing things on the radio, how good he is at doing these subtle reactions. And this is the early days of television. And I compare that to I was watching some of those old Our Gang, Little Rascals episodes. And in those ones, it's all about the reaction, but they're they're giant reactions.
Yes.
So just these subtle reactions, and it's way funnier and it's really effective. I think that.
I totally agree with you, John. And that's perhaps what he had learned by 1955 was the power of that camera to even though we're showing him, 2 1/2 or 3/4 length size, that we would be drawn to his face and how much he could just do with the subtleties of his face. Oh, was marvelous to see, because I think you won't see that if you go back to look at the first television episode. There he feels like he has to he's more nervous and he has to be more broad. Yeah.
Yes, and I think if you look at who was on at that time, when Jack came on in 1950, a lot of people weren't there yet. There was no I Love Lucy yet. That's still a year down the road. He's the first person that essentially legitimizes television and says, here's a big freaking star that we're putting on television, and it's not just going to be Milton Berle, who had a small radio show and became a star of early television, but Milton was doing the pie in the face. He was doing, like John saying, the over exaggerated everything. And I can't imagine how Jack comes in and goes, all right, we're going to try to be, I'll try and do my subtle stuff, but I don't know if that's going to work. So like you said, in the first episode, he's a little more animated than he is later on, because he realizes later on, oh, my subtle stuff does play. But in the first episode, there's no way he's going to know that. So the first episode, he goes kind of back and forth between subtle stuff and kind of in-your-face stuff to kind of see what works, I think. He was kind of experimenting in some ways. And I'm glad he figured out that the subtle stuff for him made him stand out. And heck, I mean, the guy ran 15 years on television. How many people have a 15-year run in a comedy? You've got Jack, and you've got, I guess, Red Skelton is about it. Red Skelton ran for, I think, 20 years in television. But Red was, like I said, like Milton Berle on steroids. He was way animated compared to Jack. So, oh, look at that! You got the Jack. You the Jack thing. That's very good. Just an instinct, she does the Jack thing. That's great.
You hang around somebody for a while, and you pick up their mannerisms.
No, but yeah, I love that Jack figured that out. I love that it worked. And like you say, they tell us, the folks that had saw the Jack do the radio show, that he was doing these mannerisms and things on the radio show, and only the audience could even figure out what he was doing, and some of the stares and the pauses.
Right. You're right. On the radio, he had to do a lot of more hmms.
Yeah.
And now cut that out. Where he could start to calm down about those on television.
Correct. Yeah. Agreed. I mean, some of these, let's talk, I'm just going to take us to the Christmas shopping episode, because it's probably the most famous one that the most people have seen. My son showed it to his girlfriend. I couldn't believe it. Without like me pressuring them or anything. It was Christmas time, and he said, oh, let's watch that. So they watched it. She loved it. He loved it. These are two kids that are in their 20s. And it's just so neat that it can transfer over to a new generation and things, and they could think it's great. Now, like I say, this train station episode to me is probably up with the shopping episode on television, probably my top 5 Jack Benny television episodes of all the television episodes.
And
we are going to be at some point, hopefully, either my students, we're trying to find clubs with the whole coronavirus going on and things, virtual clubs like this where we meet. I'm thinking about doing it with my students and having it be like the Beavers, where they come on and do the script. I thought that could be fun. Or somehow we're going to redo some of these. We would love to bring them to you guys. So we'll figure out how to do that. But pick this book up. It's great. It's got an intro by her. I love the fact that she put that it's by Jack Benny and Harry Kahn, and that she's just the editor, which is very true. And she does a beautiful first chapter on it, and then all the scripts. I don't want to. I do want to say, if you're looking for a book here, if you're looking for a book that just covers Jack Benny and is a great read, that's this one. If you'd like to read the scripts, that's this one, but don't want you to be surprised by reading it and going, it's just a bunch of scripts. Well, it's awesome scripts that aren't available anywhere else. So, but I love both those books. Anyway, and then I guess that covers it for those books. Oh, and we will be featuring a lot of the information I get when I talk about the TV show is from Laura's book. Isn't that insane? Look how thick that thing is.
Here we go. We'll put them all over the place.
Oh, that battling.
The other three books of the Benny Bible.
Yes, yes. And this is for the television show. It's just amazing. It goes through, and there's always pictures from every episode. Still, the ones that are out in circulation and the ones that aren't in circulation have pictures from them, which is lovely. And then it gives you so many facts about it. One fact I'll share right now, the episode we're going to have today is the train station episode that's very rare. It's been on YouTube, here and there, and we're going to talk about that episode. But it features, in this episode, it features, come on, Jewish guy, Mr. Kitzel. Mr. Kitzel by Artie Arbach. And Artie is so interesting with the Jack Benny show. Anybody want to make a guess as to how many times he appeared on the Jack Benny TV show?
100.
Ooh, great guess. A little high. It's actually 12. And of the 12, here's an interesting fact. 3 of them were after Artie died that they aired. Isn't that crazy? He died in 57, and then there were 3 episodes in 58 they showed with him on them. I think including, no, not this one. This one's from 55, but oh, I know. It was a remake. There was a remake of the train station episode. They always like to have the live ones, and then they decided, oh, we better film these. And so there's a live version of this and a film version of this, but the film version doesn't do as much for me, because the filmed one is about half, maybe a third, at Jack's house, and Mel's his plumber. And so there's a joke about that, and then they go to the train station. This episode we're going to watch today is all train station, basically the whole episode. So that's what I love about this episode. But yeah, Artie, what surprised me when I was looking through the book is when they filmed episodes, today you film an episode and usually it shows up 2 or 3 weeks after you film it or something. And they're always trying to keep ahead, by filming episodes. But Jack, when he filmed them, they truly were transcribed. They were transcribed for a long time, because they would film it and maybe it'd show up 7 months later. Maybe it'd show up. One of Artie's showed up like almost a year later. They filmed it in his last episode. I think they filmed in May, and it showed up the next April that it actually aired for the first time. I don't know why Jack would hold on to those episodes for so long, but maybe he just kind of liked to use them whenever he couldn't come up with a live episode. He's like, oh, let's grab one of those and put them in here. And I don't know, but crazy.
Well, it goes to show their timeless comedy. You can play them anytime. They don't have to be done right away.
Yeah. And I guess he knew that. So.
And he had an incredibly busy schedule. He was finishing up the last of the weekly radio shows. He was making all those big summer tours. He was guesting on other people's shows. He was starting to do the concerts again. So, he was doing so many things that indeed I think he thought a filmed episode would be able to, just as you say, to plug in when he's busy doing other things.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and that's probably what he did. It's probably exactly why he did that, because
and he also perhaps owned more rights, or the network would love to have a filmed episode for reruns, whereas rerunning the live episodes would not be as handy or as easy. So so you're right that whenever he did a really good live episode that he enjoyed, he oftentimes again redid it as a filmed episode. So
right. Oh, and before we were taping, I was going to ask you guys about next week, but I can always cut this out, or maybe I'll leave it in. I don't care. For next week, when we do this, I was leaning towards doing the Rod Serling episode, or maybe doing the Marilyn Monroe episode. Did you guys have either of those that you liked better, or were you looking forward to do some other episode?
I have nothing in mind. I've seen the Marilyn Monroe episode before. It's one of the few television episodes I've seen, but I'm also a huge Twilight Zone fan, so that's always good.
Okay, I'll tell you what, let's do Rod Serling, and then we'll do Marilyn Monroe maybe the week after that.
So long ago, that'd be terrific.
Yeah, because it's out there on YouTube, which is wonderful. That's why I started doing this. There's so many episodes out there on YouTube. Some of them are in the syndication package. Some of them aren't. Some of them are easily available. Some are hardly available. I mean, the Rod Serling is definitely one that's hasn't been out there very much. I mean, I'm so glad we have it. For a long time on YouTube, there was like a 5-minute clip, and nobody had the episode, and then somebody found the episode and put it up there. So that's great to have. So I'm just up there grabbing episodes whenever I can to make sure they don't go away, because sometimes they go away, but it's all good. But anyway.